So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you've gotten jumped by life and all of life's cousins? You know, it's kind of like when your bank account is acting up, it's red, your health report is a little or a lot gray, like you just can't seem to get over that cold, and your family matters are just black and blue all at the same time. But you know what? This happens to all of us. And typically the way that we usually react is that we panic, we hustle, we lose sleep, and then we even try to fix the situation ourselves. Same thing happened 3,000 years ago with a king named Jehoshaphat, and he found himself backed into a similar corner. See, his situation could actually make our bad week look like a vacation. So what I'd like to do is today I want to take a look at King Jehoshaphat's playbook. All right, so let's lean in. So our focal scripture is going to be 2 Chronicles 20 and 12, but we're going to touch a bunch of different scriptures. So like I always say, I want you to go back. I want you to read the full chapter. I want you to make sure that you grasp everything that's being said and that you get this for yourself and not just what I'm saying. Okay, so here we go. Here's the context. 2 Chronicles 20. King Jehoshaphat, right? He had 3 different armies heading to destroy him. And what was his response? In verse 12, he makes the most honest prayer that I believe is in the Bible. This is his prayer. In verse 12, he says, "We have no power against this great multitude that is coming against us, nor do we even know what to do. But our eyes are on you." You see, the king, he was out of options, like most of us. And at many times in our lives, we don't know what to do. So we're going to lean in a little bit. We're going to lean in on this chapter. And we're going to look at the blueprint that the king gives us for when we are out of options, just like him, so that we know what to do. Let's call it the Judah strategy, okay? You see, before any miracle could happen for the king, he had to do a couple things. He had to change his posture. He had to change his position, and he had to change his proximity. See, he didn't grab his sword first and say, "Let's go out and fight this battle." The things that he did are the same things that we can do at our kitchen table. So before we go any further, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to like it, subscribe to it on YouTube, and I want you to share it with somebody. Okay, so now that we did that, let's look at step 1 in verse 3. And verse 3 reads, it says, "And Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek the Lord. And he proclaimed a fast throughout all of Judah." See, this was crucial because before he called his generals, he called a fast. Before he called his friends, he called a fast. Before he sought any counsel, before he got any thoughts on the matter from anybody, the first thing he did was he called a fast. Why was that? It's simple. Because God needed to give him instructions, and he needed to shut out the world's noise. See, a fast is simply about silencing the noise. It's not about the food. It's about turning down the volume of your problems so you can hear the signal from heaven. And that's what the king did. He began to turn down the volume and turn up the signal. The highest person in charge, the highest person in control, sought God in a crisis. He didn't seek his generals, because everybody has an opinion. Your cousins have an opinion. The news has an opinion. The experts on social media have an opinion. Hey, if I'm honest, I even have an opinion. But fasting is when we put our phone down and put our face down so we can hear the only voice that actually has an answer, and that's God. So now let's look at step 2 in verses 6 through 9. Jehoshaphat starts praying, and he says, "Are you not God in heaven, Did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land? He wasn't giving God a history lesson on who God was, but he was reminding God of God's promises. And that's okay, because that is what helps us anchor ourselves. When we say, God, you promise to be my provider, you aren't reminding God that he promised because God forgot to be your provider. You're reminding God because we forget that God promised to be our provider. It's like saying, Lord, you're the one who provided for me last year. God knows he provided for you last year. God, you're the one who said you'll never leave me. God didn't. You're reminding yourself that God did not leave you so that you don't lose your mind in this situation. See, you're putting it in God's hands at the same time. And in step 3, he declared a need. And at the end of verse 12, he said, for we have no power, nor do we know what to do. See, this is the empty cup moment. See, it's so countercultural because we're told, fake it until you make it. But with God, God can't fill our cup if it's already full of us. So instead of faking it till we make it, we have to just admit, God, we are stuck. We don't know what to do. And that's the only way that we're going to get God's wisdom. We have to admit that we're all out of moves. You see, in God's kingdom, our I can't is the invitation for God's I will. So when we learn how to admit that we lack the wisdom that we need, then we're finally giving God the room to actually flow and move. All right, let's get to step 4, right? And let's look at the final line, verse 12. And it says, but our eyes are on you. Now I want you to let that sink in. Our eyes are on you, right? This is what I call the eye shift. It's the eye shift because we stop looking at the failing department and start looking at the successful CEO. What I mean, take Elon Musk. Tesla has been under fire a whole lot, yet people still trust in Elon Musk's success. And that's how we have to be with God. No matter what's going on, we still trust in God's success. We have to stop looking and staring at the mountain and stare at the mountain mover, because that's when we begin to be courageous. See, after that, all was done. Then God responds in verse 15. He said, don't be dismayed because of this great multitude, because this battle right here is not yours. This battle is God's. And then he gives him instruction in verse 17. And he turns around and he says, well, this is kind of where it gets weird, but this is what he says, right? He says, stand firm, hold your position, and see the salvation of the Lord. What? I got 3 armies coming at me. You want me to stand still? You see, in the Hebrew language, these words are much deeper than how they sound in our English language. See, the word stand still is Yatsab. It doesn't mean that we're just sitting on the couch with the remote eating chips. We're like a crossing guard. And the crossing guard stands in the middle of a busy, dangerous street, right? When they got kids crossing, they aren't fighting with the cars. They aren't running away from the cars. They are stationed in the middle of the busy, dangerous street. And they trust their uniform. And they trust the little sign that they have to stop 2-ton trucks and cars. You see, stand still means stay in your spot. Keep your integrity and refuse to let panic move you. Be that crossing guard. And then he says, see or watch. Raha. Think of a storm tracker. When a big storm rolls in and you sit on your porch, or you're watching on the news and And you aren't trying to stop the wind from moving. You're just trying to witness the power of the wind, the power of something that is much bigger than you. And so when you stand still and you become a spectator of God's power, then you're watching him work the overtime shift, work the shift that you can't. See, this is when we're watching God move the chess pieces of our life, when we think we're out of moves. See, in Hebrew, to be still is the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is for your soul to keep still while the winds are screaming. And see, the final component of all of that is then verse 21. And it's the praise pivot. I call it the praise pivot because Jehoshaphat did something crazy. He sent singers in front of the army. He didn't send the army first. He sent singers. Imagine that in the war that we're in right now. There's people walking around, armies, singing thank you songs. People will be looking at them like they're straight crazy because it sounds crazy, right? But here's the logic. Praise is the sound of a done deal. See, look at verse 20. God says, believe in the Lord your God and you shall be established. Believe his prophets and you shall prosper. See, verse 20 says, if you believe, you will be established and you will prosper. Established means you become unshakable and unmovable. The storm might be blowing, but you aren't budging. Prosper means advancement. It doesn't mean like we get this big bank account, but it's movement. It means you move forward, not because of you. You move forward, not because you were the best fighter, but because you stood well. You were the best stander. You came out of this struggle stronger, wiser, and more respected than you were when you went in because you stood. And that's what happened with the king. He stood. So if you don't know what to do, stop trying to fix it and start trying to stand. Because guess what? This battle is not yours. My question to you is, what is your triple threat today? We all have them. Is it your bills? Is it your health? Is it family drama? Is it something else? You see, God isn't asking us to go out and swing a sword that we don't have. He's simply asking us to take our station, silence the noise, and remind ourselves of God's track record. And then admit that we need help. And then once we do that, our job is just to stand still. Because the battle is not ours. It belongs to him. So if you're in that standing season right now, I want you to drop a line, standing firm, or put in a prayer request in the comments and let us pray with you and stand with you. And then I want you to share this with someone who feels surrounded. And most importantly, give God the praise for the battle that he's already won. Until next time, blessings and keep your faith in focus.